Marcia Moran, welcome to the Beer and Business Podcast.
Thank you.
We are really glad to have you. You've got a truly inspirational story that I've only read like the top line of your bio, and I can't wait to hear the rest of it. But unfortunately, well, fortunately, really, if I'm going to be honest, we have to start with beer.
We do.
Yes, and the star of the show today is from Line Creek Brewing. It is called Stout Side the Perimeter. It is a double chocolate stout. So that little play on words, Marcia, if you live in the Atlanta area, you either live inside the perimeter or outside the perimeter. We call it ITP or OTP. Well, this is Stout Side, not outside, so, you know.
Oh, you get the play on words today?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I got that one right away.
You?
Well, it took me a minute because I'm slow, but this one was easy. So thank you, Line Creek, for it. You know, it's got to be easy enough for me and Darren to figure out.
Well, they sell this. They have it at the brewery, and you can find this in your local stores, too.
Yeah, this is actually, I love stouts. And Marcia, I know you can't be in the studio with us today, but you are also drinking a stout, are you not?
Yes, I am. I've got the Guinness Extra Stout, and it is marvelous.
Well, since you're not in our market and you can't buy Line Creek, we'll allow it.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have mad respect for Guinness. They've been around forever. Yeah. Even longer than Darren's been alive, if you can believe that. Well, cheers. Let's give this one a shot, Darren, and see how it tastes. Oh, my God, man. That is really chocolatey. Do you like chocolate, Marcia?
I love chocolate.
You would love this beer. It is really rich. It's not overly sweet, but it's got a little bit of that chocolate sweetness to it. But the chocolate flavor really comes through. It's almost like eating a dark chocolate versus a milk chocolate.
Oh.
Double chocolate stout is what it's called. So there's a little extra flavor. Actually, it's gotten better. The first couple sips, I was like, And now I think my taste buds are happy. So.
If I put this in the fridge, I'd have to hide it in the back because my wife would steal every one of them. Double chocolate?
There we go. There we go.
That is delicious. Well, folks, please support Line Creek. If you're here in the area, go to the brewery. I mean, there's no better place to ring in the holidays and the new year than Line Creek Brewing.
Or any day.
Or just ring in the fact that you're alive.
Hey, it's 3:27. Look at, yay, I'm at the brewery.
Or pick some up at your local grocery or bottle shop, gas station, illegal shop out of the trunk of somebody's car. Wherever you can find it, just go get some because it's delicious.
Not out of the trunk of my car or yours.
Not mine.
It's going to the garage.
Not for sale.
It's on the way.
So Marcia, I literally read the first two sentences of your bio and said, oh my gosh, I've got to have you on the show. So I want you to start with what was going on in your life in 2014 in the event that changed everything.
So I was a marketing guru. And essentially, I went out to companies and I heard what all their people said, and I repositioned them so that they were actually doing what they said they were doing.
It's funny how that's not always the case.
It sounds like it sounds more like you could do that for me in my life. And we're going to be your marketing coach. We're actually going to reposition you to do what you say you are doing. Right. It's like, oh boy. That'd be
so nobody really says what they do. And I thought that was a terrible thing. So anyway, it was Saturday night. I went to bed. And when I woke up the next day, I knew that something was off, but I didn't know what. So I took my phone and I texted my friend Rochelle to tell her that I wasn't meeting her for breakfast. I put my phone down, I rolled over on my left-hand side, and I got the worst headache imaginable. And even though it hurt so bad, I fell asleep.
Oh, weird.
And when I woke up the next time, I was paralyzed on my right-hand side from the top of my head down to my toes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So I knew that I had a choice to make. I either would make it out of bed and get help. My husband was in the house. Or I would just lay there and die. So I fell off the bed and I dragged myself across the carpet using my left hand to drag me. And I got to the door and it was closed, so I had to reach up and grab the handle. And I was kind of laying down and reaching up, and I didn't have enough reach. And I don't know how many times I tried to get the handle, but I finally stuck it open. And I was so wet and tired. I didn't take a nap, but I rested for a long while. And then when I finally got the gumption, I made my way down the hall. And partway down the hall, I totally ran out of gas and couldn't move. And
that's just so crazy.
And I didn't know what was wrong. You know, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. So I thought, well, my husband will come up for something to drink. And something went crash, and I don't know what it was, but something fell down, and my husband came up and he looked at me and he said, "Marcia, are you all right?" And that's the time when I realized I couldn't say anything.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, he asked me if I could speak to him, and I couldn't. So he called 911. And then he looked around the house to see if he could figure out what was wrong with me and couldn't find anything. So he came back and waited with me. When the ambulance got there, the paramedics came in and they said, "When did the stroke happen?" And that was the first time either one of us thought of the word stroke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, what a terrifying experience. I mean, I know we're right at the beginning of the story, but I just can't imagine what it must have been like to wake up and realize that half your body's paralyzed.
Yeah. I would say the thing I think I remember the most is I have to get the help.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scared, but not so scared I was paralyzed. I mean, I was paralyzed, but not metaphorically paralyzed.
Not mentally.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get stuck with the difference between like literal and figurative, I can help Darren out because he's a bit slow, but don't worry about it. We'll get him through it.
Yeah, sorry. I'm listening to this. You're leaving me speechless right now. So.
I know, it's crazy.
It's like,
I mean, if I could stop you right here, I've talked to a lot of people that have had strokes or had a loved one that had a stroke, but this is the first time I've heard an experience like this so visceral, like, because you never think, like, what would it be like if I had one? Mm-hmm. But wow, this is, I mean, Darren's right. I'm struggling for words, and I just can't imagine what that time would have been like. However long that was, it would have felt like the most agonizingly long and terrifying point of my life.
You'd think that.
But not, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, having a stroke kind of changes the way you think about life in general.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So the paramedics got me in the ambulance, and the last thing they said to my husband before they left was, "Drive the speed limit." Because they were worried that he would drive too fast, not obey the stop signs or stop signals, and have an accident. And they said the last thing they wanted was to have two people in the hospital rather than one.
Fair.
That was good.
Yeah. So I actually lost consciousness while I was in the ambulance. And
I'm surprised you remember as much as you did. Like, that's fascinating to me. I mean, I never thought about what this experience would be like, but I can't believe that you had all that time where you were cognizant and remember this.
I think it's really odd too, but I think it's so pronounced because it was one of the terrible things about my life that happened to me.
Right.
And so maybe if I hadn't written a book, I would have forgotten it, but it's really clear to me.
Yeah.
What the day was like.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So you lost consciousness in the ambulance, and then I guess you regained consciousness some point in the hospital. And
Yes. So I woke up and I saw my husband was there, and I knew everything was fine. And so I went back to sleep. That night, nurse, actually, I think it was a physical therapist, came into my room and told me, "There, we're going to take me for a walk."
okay,
Yeah, I know. And I went, all right. So she put a belt around my waist,
yeah,
and she and my husband hoisted me out of the bed. And she actually held me up as she walked me around the nurse's station. And if it weren't for the physical therapist, I'm sure I would have been on the floor.
yeah.
But apparently, I had gotten some movement back in my right leg. So it was walking, but I like to say it was like Young Frankenstein, if you've seen the movie.
Yeah.
It's clomp, clomp, clomp. Like when he's using, he's going down the steps right after he meets Igor.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was really not pretty.
So was this the day you had the stroke?
That's the day I had the stroke.
So is there some sort of, I've never, I mean, obviously this is something I've not really talked to anybody in depth about, but is there some sort of benefit to getting somebody moving as quickly as possible after the event?
Yes. So the sooner they have you up and moving, the better you recover.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were hobbling around, the nurse and your husband are basically supporting your weight, but you're moving, and that's what they wanted to see.
Exactly. That's just what they wanted to see.
Now, at this point, did you have any mobility in your arm or any other parts of the right side of your body, or was it just that leg you could move around a little bit?
So I had a little movement in my right hand arm, but not much.
Are you right-handed?
Yes.
Oh, that sucks.
Yes, it does.
Oh, man.
Not good.
Yeah.
So what's going? Let me ask you. I mean, this is just so fascinating to me. What's going through your mind at this point? You're in the hospital. You wake up. We got to get you out of the bed and get you moving, and you can barely walk. And you realize now you had a stroke. Like, what is that whole process like internally?
So I guess for me, the stroke was on my left-hand side. So my right side was paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a left thinker. So all of a sudden you think about the world in a very different way. And for me, I didn't really think about the world at all. It was very present. So if it was happening now, I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the future and stuff, I kind of knew about it, but I really took every moment as it came. For a long time, actually.
That's interesting.
Because you think you said you're a left brain thinker, so that means you're
Yeah.
more analytical and a couple other
Smartly.
No, that's not one of them. And if you're a right brain thinker, you think more creatively.
Yeah. So my smartly side went away.
Are you making fun of me? Okay, I don't like that.
Sorry.
I got her. Oh, that's awesome.
No, you're not the first one
So
who
you-
had to
so
listen to
you're-
his Trump impersonation,
Yeah,
Marcia.
it's
Sorry.
awful. I'm sorry. So you were actually thinking about the world from a more creative point of view, like immediately, huh?
Yeah, right.
Like, how do I make my hand move?
Right, that's-
I got to get creative with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did. That's something I never would have thought about that.
You're moving, and I know people have had a stroke. They say, I mean, as you said, you were probably exhausted physically,
Oh my God, yes.
and they're trying to get you to get up and move around, and you're probably just like, just let me go back. And I know they don't want you to go back to sleep at all.
Well, no,
Don't
they
mind.
actually don't mind that I slept all the time.
Okay.
I did wake up, and periodically they did something to me. I'm going to say to me. maybe with me is the right word.
It depends on what it was.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, I don't remember too much about the hospital. I mean, I remember the nurse who rolled me into my bedroom the first time when I was released from the ER. She stopped by the bathroom and got me set up and went out and made my bed. Well, I was a stroke victim and I didn't have any support on my right-hand side, so I went crash.
Oh, no.
And she and my husband ran in and went, that is the time my husband actually realized he needed to become my advocate because I couldn't speak for myself. And no one else really cared about what happened to me. I mean, they cared that I didn't fall down, but they didn't really think about what had happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when he realized he needed to become my advocate. The problem is he didn't know what advocates did.
Right. Well, and I think there's also something else that we should clarify here, too, about your story, is that you still at this point could not speak, right?
I might have been able to say yes and no.
And that's about it.
That was it.
So it was
and you didn't have your right hand to write messages out.
No, but you know what? If I could have thought about it, I could write with my left hand.
Really?
So I had a boo-boo when I was in high school, and I dislocated my shoulder, my elbow. So I learned to write with my left hand back then, and I could have written, but I didn't think about it.
Oh, geez.
But it doesn't matter because, so I had aphasia, which is the inability for me to speak. It also meant that I couldn't write. I couldn't think of what words fell together in sentences. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even think about how to make a word.
Oh my
goodness. That took a long time.
That happens to me all day
That's
long.
Interesting because, again, believe it or not, Darren, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if you knew that or not.
You stay on a Holiday Inn Express, you might be one for a day.
Even if I did that, I'd be in deep trouble. But I'd never really thought about. I've heard stroke victims not being able to talk before, but I thought it was more of a motor function. I didn't realize that you just couldn't articulate. You couldn't even string together the words to express what you were feeling, what was going on.
So everybody in the hospital could speak to me and I understood what they were saying. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't, and the words that I wanted to say back were in my head, but there was no way to get them from in my head to out of my mouth.
Wow.
Is that because the brain goes into survival mode at that point and kind of shuts certain things down just to go back to the basic survival functions that it needs to?
No, so it happens to be where I had my stroke. So It was actually, I had Apraxia aphasia, which was, the Apraxia's area is in front of the left ear. And so the stroke, and I had a blood clot. I didn't have a bleed. I had a blood clot. So wherever that blood clot stuck, the blood didn't flow into that area of my brain, and it died.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, how long were you in the hospital before they...
I was in the hospital for 4 days, and then I went to rehab for 2 weeks. And then I had home care for 2 weeks. Then I had 2 weeks off, and then I had 6 weeks of outpatient care.
Now, as you said, your husband realized he had to become your advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's, obviously we're going to get to that, but at what point was he, I mean, when you're in the hospital for those 4 days and going through the 2 weeks of rehab, is he just stepping up and kind of saying what you're trying to, what you're thinking or thinks you're thinking, I guess,
Yes.
to make sure things are moving along?
Yes. So another interesting thing happened in the I'm going to say it's with the nurses. So I couldn't actually chew food and swallow because they were afraid that if I swallowed food, I would choke. And my choking sensor was, I'm going to say, turned off. So it would have done damage because it would have gone down into my lungs and I would have gotten pneumonia.
Wow.
So they brought up liquid and I had to drink it with my face to the forward. I had to turn to my left and swallow. Then I had to turn forward again to drink some more. So somebody in the kitchen sent up chicken for lunch one day. And I go, ooh, there's food.
That would have been my response as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care if it's hospital chicken. I want it.
Exactly. And I took my first bite and I choked, of course. And I don't know how they got the food out. But I do remember the nurses coming into my room and they were being they chastised me. It's like,
what are you doing?
Oh, wow.
You shouldn't eat this. It's like, okay, I've had a stroke. I don't remember anything that you've said after you've left the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the point where my husband realized that I actually could die from this. And that's the point where he got really nervous for me. Before then, he thought I'd recover. But he thought she could die eating. And that's when he called my sister and asked if she would come because he needed help.
Now, let me ask you something. At this point, while you're still in the hospital, were you given any sort of prognosis from the doctors? I mean, were they telling you that, oh, we think you're going to make a perfect recovery, or were they telling you that they didn't think so? What was the guidance you were getting from them? Do you know?
So my doctors told me nothing, and I think that's probably no. I think that's actually a good thing. So I would try to ask how I would be, and they would say, "There's no way of knowing. We can't tell you." And so I had nothing to keep me from thinking I can get to 100%. Right? Yeah. I had nothing keeping me down either to be, well, you can only recover to 50% of yourself. It was in me to go, okay, I'm going to be 100% better. And you know what? I made a pledge. I'm going to be 100% better by the first anniversary, and I'm going to go on a run.
Well, that's actually a really interesting thing because I wouldn't have thought about it. But yeah, if a doctor came in and said, I think you're going to make a 50% recovery, that would be demoralizing and maybe devastating to the point to where you don't want to try as hard.
Exactly.
Maybe for some people. I know how you and I are, though.
Oh, I'd have told the doctor to go F himself.
Yeah. I'll come back and see you in a year, and guess what?
Hey, wait, he's speaking.
If you can outrun me, then I'm not going to kick your ass at that time.
He can't form a sentence, but for some reason he can still cuss. I don't know. This guy is not normal.
That functions on the creative side of the brain. Yeah. What are you talking about?
I've duplicated that across all parts of my brain. But yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing. And so you made this pledge to yourself. And how did that go? Tell us about your journey to recovery.
Well, I'll tell you that I didn't run in any marathon my first anniversary or the second or the third. So I actually dislocated my right elbow when I was out practicing.
Really?
I did, yeah. So I decided that maybe running isn't for me.
Listen, take it from me, marathons are overrated.
Okay.
It's just personal torture for no reason at all other than to say you did it, which I guess for some people is good. I don't know. I'd rather sit back and drink some Line Creek beer. Just saying.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
So you dislocated your right elbow, but you said when you were in high school you also broke your right elbow?
No, I dislocated the same elbow twice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you
damn
probably
elbow.
don't do it a third time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leave him alone. He's, I guess, that elbow is kind of a finicky guy.
Yeah. So I think that, so I was in the rehab hospital, and I think that's when I decided to make the pledge. But I had speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. And when I was in speech therapy my first day, she told me that I had apraxia and aphasia. So apraxia means that your muscles don't work well enough to form the words right. And aphasia means that I couldn't get the words that I was thinking out of my mouth. So I thought I think I'm in big trouble here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the National Aphasia Association website says that if you're not cured by apraxia by the third month, you probably have it for life.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you something about dislocating my elbow that gave me hope. So when I dislocated my elbow, it would have been almost 2 years since my stroke. My husband came and picked me up, took me to the hospital. They gave me morphine, and the apraxia was gone.
Oh.
Until the morphine wore off, and then it was back. But it gave me enough hope to figure that maybe there's something out there that I can try that will help me get rid of this apraxia. And so I had just started treatments with laser therapy, and that's where they put a cold laser on your head. And I just started it, so I didn't know whether or not it would work. But I went back after I could move my elbow, and he started it again. And the interesting thing was that it did impact my apraxia. I'm going to say 40% by the time I was done.
Really?
Which was better. But 3.5 years after my stroke, I had a doctor tell me that I should try neurofeedback. And I had never heard of neurofeedback, so I went home and I read about it. And there's something in the site that really piqued my interest, which was 85% of traumatic brain injury survivors tried neurofeedback and got better. Yeah, exactly.
So what is neurofeedback?
So neurofeedback is, I'm not a doctor. So it's
Neither
going to
are
be,
we. I don't know if you could pick up on that.
I didn't.
Jake admitted it earlier on, so yeah.
Just
So
a couple of
it's-
knuckleheads.
It's a device that's, I'm going to say, as big as 2 smartphones put together, that's connected to a computer, and there are 5 EEG leads coming out. So there's 2 positive, 2 negative, and a ground that go in your head. And it uses electricity, and I'm going to say it uses 1/100th of a AAA battery as a type of a frame of reference to pulse into your brain. And this pulsing, I'm going to say, interrupts your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you're going, oh, wait, I was not actually doing it right. So it's like it's resetting your brain as it's pulsing, right? It's weird. So the first time I went in for this, I did it. I had the sensors on my head, and I don't feel anything, right? But I can see my brainwaves going across the monitor. That day, I noticed that I spoke a little bit better.
Wow.
After 16 sessions, I spoke like I do now.
No kidding.
So it almost
No
reactivates
kidding.
the neurons to get them to start, jump starts the neurons to start firing again?
It does help with getting the neurons firing. But I think it's really about like jump starting a car, right?
Yeah.
So I was frozen in place. They jump started my car, and now I'm fine again.
That's crazy.
It's better than having to take morphine every day to do it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Although one might be more fun, recreationally speaking, but just...
Yeah.
Morning cocktail. Yeah. Darren Flanagan, folks, I can't help it. I mean, I have to podcast with him, Marcia. It's ugly. But so I want to go back to something. So you broke or dislocated your elbow 2 years in and still couldn't speak.
I couldn't speak a lot. I could say a few words. I could have a normal conversation sometimes.
Yep.
Hi, how's the weather, blah, blah, blah. But if anyone wanted to go deeper, like if I was going to, say, interview for a job, I would shut down. So I could say nothing.
So speaking of that, you were in marketing before that.
Yeah.
And now you had your stroke, and now you're saying you're going on interviews. Did you get laid off from your job, or you just put up on hiatus for a while till you had recovery, or?
So I actually had my own company.
Oh, wow.
So the day I had the stroke is the day that my company closed down.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awful.
So thinking, well, if I can't work for myself, I'll get a job. Well, you have to be able to say something if you want a job.
Right.
And apparently I couldn't get a job because I couldn't say anything, so I wrote a book.
So your book is titled Stroke Forward.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting, you sent me a copy of it. I started reading it this morning. I've gotten through chapter 1, but still got much more to read. So what I find interesting is that I think the main topic of this book is how to become your own advocate in the healthcare world, right?
So I wrote the book for 3 types of people: people who've had a stroke, people who care for those who had a stroke, and people who want to be their own advocate. Mm-hmm. And those people are not necessarily the same person.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because, one of the things that most of the people that listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs and small business owners, but, we also have a lot of people that are employees getting into side hustles and that sort of thing. But one area that I think probably is the biggest fear for everybody that is a full-time business owner or wants to be one is healthcare.
Yeah.
Because it's hard enough as an insured person, but you get into owning your own business, and now either I'm going uninsured or I'm going to have to find my own healthcare plan, and trying to navigate that is a mess.
Paying an exorbitant amount of money for a little bit of nothingness.
Yeah, this whole topic of the healthcare industry and advocating for yourself is a really important one, and I think a lot of times people may not know where to start.
Yeah. Well, I hope that if anybody reads the book, they've got more to start with than my husband did, because he had to go day by day by day.
Now, one of the things I noticed in this book is it looks like you did a lot of research. And I mean, this is not just, I would tell you that this is not just casually written by somebody that had a stroke. I mean, you put a lot of work into this.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody that, has an interest in reading this book will realize that this is actually a very comprehensive, guide, for lack of a better term. And it is well researched.
I did some research, yeah. So the research associated with my book is with my type of stroke. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand that every stroke is different. And there are some things that are common. So you can say, so I think I said 65% of people have a problem with swallowing after they've had a stroke. Okay, so that's enough people who've had that one thing happen that you can make a claim for that, right?
Yep.
So I had a stroke that only 1 to 2% of people get. They don't know why I had a stroke. I just had it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Well, you know what they say, different strokes for different folks.
I know, that is crazy.
That's really not good. Yeah, it's like,
But-
look, I'm a minority, and I don't want to be in that category at
I don't
all.
want to be the 1%. That's the 1% I don't want to be in. I want to be in the 1% top earners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they have no idea why you had the stroke. It was just,
They had no idea. No.
wow.
She had a headache. Woke up, had a headache, laid down to take a nap or go to sleep, and then you went back to sleep, and then boom, you wake up and you were paralyzed on that whole right side.
Well, I think that my stroke had happened before I went to sleep
Right.
because I couldn't actually read the text to Rochelle.
Mm.
So I did the text, but I couldn't read it. So
yeah,
go ahead.
that's not good. That's not good at all. But then you have a doctor. Now, is the doctor who said he diagnosed you being in that the
lucky 1%?
Yeah, the same one who told you you only had a 50% chance of fully recovering?
No, that was me making that up. They never told her that.
Yeah.
They didn't tell her that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you listening, Darren? Are you here?
What?
I think he's. How much of this double chocolate porter have you drank?
Not enough yet. I'm sorry. There are outside distractions going on.
Yeah, we've got outside the studio here is buzzing. We've got people. It's almost like the old days where people were out, Darren, before COVID.
Out and actually moving
I know,
around.
it's crazy.
But without purpose. So you said that your husband is he's your advocate.
Right.
Part of your book is targeted to that market, that audience. What were, without giving the book away, because we definitely want people to read it, but what were one of the biggest challenges that you guys faced or he faced as your advocate?
Probably thinking about what I would say when they were asking me questions.
And that went on for a couple of years until you had that therapy, right?
Well, I could kind of tell people enough as time went on. But I think for him, so he actually went back to work in mid-August. Okay, so had my stroke March 30th, 2014. Mm-hmm. And he took time off the first couple of weeks, and then he worked from home. So when mid-August came and he had to go back to work, he asked me if I wanted to go for a drive. Woohoo! A drive. So you'd have to understand, I drive a 1997 Miata with a stick shift.
Oh, you are one of our kind, Marcia.
And she's right-handed.
Yeah. And I'm right-handed.
And she had her stroke on the right side, driving a stick.
So the garage door goes up. I'm looking at the car, glinting in the sun. We get inside, and I turn the key, and it starts. That's the first thing, it starts. So it has been sitting in the garage since March. Okay, so I think this is a good sign. Now, if I could just get the handle, the gear shift in reverse, well, that would be fine. Well, I couldn't get it in reverse. I had to use my left hand. We got out to the street, and I put it in first gear, and actually it hurt, but I could drive it, other than reverse, which that's okay. So my husband said, you can drive on the streets, no highway, and I'm giving you a 4-mile radius. That's your area. If you have a doctor's appointment, you can go to the doctor, but again, no highway. Mm-hmm. And that's the day where I started taking the advocacy from him and gave it back to myself.
That's empowering, getting back in your car. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a big deal. You know, it's interesting. I want to go back to this whole topic of advocacy because I've got my own experience with this, Marcia.
Really?
I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast, but I had 4 rounds of back surgery
Ooh.
about I guess it was 6 years ago is when I had it done. And the story goes like this. I was having really bad issues with my lower back. I had for a long time. Well, come to find out I had degenerative disc disease in my low back. And so it got so bad that where if I stood for 20 minutes, my back would just literally give out. I would collapse. I
Wow.
almost collapsed on stage giving a presentation to 3,000 people one day. And if the podium wasn't there, I would have went down because I
Wow.
kind of fell on the podium and just leaned on it and finished up my speech and said, I need somebody to help me get down off the stage. It was bad. So I went to a spinal specialist and he said, yep, we're going to have to fuse your spine. And I'm like, oh man, that's going to limit my mobility and all that. Went to another doctor, same thing. Yep, fuse your spine. And I didn't like that answer, so I kept going. I'm like, there's got to be a better answer to this. So I went and I shopped around spinal specialists. And finally, the 7th guy I went to, literally went to 7 different spinal specialists. Just, is there another option out there? I'm talking to people. I'm on the internet. The 7th guy I went to said, listen, here's the deal. Your insurance is going to pay for spinal fusion. He said, but you are, at the time I was in my late 30s, he's like, you're way too young. I don't want to fuse your spine. You got way too many good years in you. He said, the thing is, we as doctors don't have any idea why this happens. It's just a mystery. And he said, your spine may never, your discs may never degenerate anymore. This may be it. And what's happening is you have these nerves between your facet joints that are rubbing and causing all this pain. And he said, I've got a procedure where I will go in and I will burn those nerves from the inside and kill them. And it's called radiofrequency ablation. That's what the procedure's called. And you have to go through several rounds because after you burn them and kill them, they start to grow back, and you have to do it several times before they finally give up. And he said, here's the problem. Your insurance isn't going to pay for it. And it's going to cost you like $10,000 per procedure.
Right.
So this, if we do this, it's going to be very costly.
My eye is watering just thinking of
I know.
Yeah.
that you had to go through. Oh,
It actually wasn't that bad. He doped me up good, so I still have some in case you want it.
good.
But seriously, it was one of those things where nobody ever gave me that option. Because it's like, okay, insurance is going to pay to fuse my spine, which will limit my mobility forever and probably still keep me in pain.
Easy way out. Is what it was.
But this guy's like, that's not the right answer. The right answer for you is this procedure. He said, I know I can make you feel better. He said, I'm not going to make you 100%. I'll make you 90, 95.
Yeah.
But you have to pay for it. Well, gladly, I said, I will figure out financially how to make this work. Do it. 100%.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
He made me better. But it's one of those things where I had to go find the answer. I had to advocate for myself because everybody was giving me this answer. Oh, well, here's what we're going to do. Only because that's what my insurance was going to pay for. Well, that's not the right thing for me. That's the right thing for the doctor, for the insurance, but not me. And that's really messed up.
Yeah. Well, I found out about laser therapy and neurofeedback because I kept looking.
Yep, there you go. And it's like, where was my doctor? Why didn't my doctor recommend this? Because that was immediately my response. And I finally found this guy. All I could think of was I went to all these prominent back surgeons. These guys are filthy rich, driving to work in Porsches, living in huge McMansions, very successful. Why didn't we talk about this? Why didn't you why did little old knucklehead Jake have to go out, searching doctor after doctor, not accepting the answer to find this on my own? That's not, and I'm not railing on the health industry or doctors in general. I'm not, believe me, I'm not, because there are wonderful doctors out there.
Did you go back and ask some of them why they didn't recommend it?
No, but guess who I've referred I think I've probably referred 30 or 40 people to this doctor
Yeah.
since my surgeries, you know? Because ultimately, I found the answer through a doctor. So again, I'm not railing on doctors, but it's just one of those things where what that did for me, that experience was a big eye opener. That just because you're in a hospital, just because you're talking to a doctor or a nurse, does not necessarily mean that you might be getting the best answer for you.
Right.
And if you don't advocate for yourself, there's nobody left.
Kind of like having an entrepreneur's mindset, though. You know,
Well,
really
I think, yes, you're absolutely
really
right.
is. You're like, I don't like this answer. This is unacceptable. And I'm going to keep going until I get one person to give me a different answer. And now I've got two options to choose from.
I'm too stupid to know any better.
You know, and we do the same thing as, you know, as a business owner. You're your own business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea, and you're like, I don't like what's being said, or I don't like the way this is being done, or I think I can do this better or do it differently and improve. And there you go. That's what you did.
And you know, you bring up a very interesting point. If you're an entrepreneur, you look for different answers. And I wonder if that's part of why I look for other answers. I think that might be part why you look for other answers.
Because you owned your own business before this happened to you.
Yeah.
So you have that mindset.
But I think this is actually a really good point and a great discussion, because I think Darren actually did make a really good point, which, Jesus Christ, I'm never going to hear any of this. Marcia, you have no idea what you've done. But anyways.
Sorry.
Oh, my ego is finally getting...
I got to get him out the door, so his head's going to be swollen. It's going to be terrible. But it is a really good point, because I do think that entrepreneurial mindset is one that searches for answers, that searches for, well, maybe there's something else, maybe there's a better way, which is ultimately what leads people to entrepreneurialism. But what I think that you've done that is beautiful and brilliant is that you've taken those learnings and you're sharing them, because there's so many people that are going to be touched by this book that don't have that same mindset.
Right.
And so it's up to us to educate and say, hey, you know what? Because the reason why I tell that story, I tell that story to people all the time about my back surgeries, because I think that there's a lesson in there for those that just go in, they talk to one doctor, and they're like, oh, this is what's going to happen. It's like, well, have you talked to another doctor? Have you gotten another opinion? You know, because you may find that there's somebody else in the exact same field that says, I've got a different idea. And I think that by you doing this, by you taking those skills as an entrepreneur, putting pen to paper, you're now empowering people that may not have come at it from the same direction that you did.
Yeah.
So how long did the book take you to finish?
It took me 4.5 years to write it and publish it. And it may seem like a long time, and believe me, it is a long time.
You believe me, it's a long time.
But the first time I sat down at my computer was, it was 9 months after my stroke, and I could type out 2 paragraphs in a day. That was it.
Wow.
I started writing my book on my first anniversary of my stroke. And so I was at the point where I could type, but I often had to retype because my right hand didn't stay on the keys. I had trouble spelling. And so it took me a long time to write the book. When I was done with the first, book, I read it, and it was so boring. I said, nobody's ever going to read this. I had no emotion in the book, none. So I put it aside and waited for probably 6 months, and I took it out and I retyped it. And that time it was better because there was some emotion. But when I got to the point where I was writing about my own family, I had no emotion in the book. So I put it aside again. And about 3 to 6 months later, I took it out and I retyped it again. And at that point, I felt like I was completely bare. So if anyone read the book, they saw me for me.
Mm.
And I was a little bit scared, but I asked everybody who I wrote about to read it and sign a disclaimer that they wouldn't sue me.
Smart.
Well, and everybody who was in the book signed a paper and said, yes, please go ahead and publish. You're doing the right thing.
That's amazing.
That makes me want to read it even more.
Yeah.
Sounds like patent place between, and the pages there.
Yeah.
Hopefully you were kind to these people, right?
Well, you're going to see.
At times.
Got to find out.
No, I was very kind. I mean, I guess I felt blessed by the people that are around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something has to be said about that too. So the people that you surround yourself with are the people that you're going to be like. So if you surround yourself with very loving people, that's going to be the way that you're going to most be like.
Very wise.
Yep.
Yeah, you do. You become what you surround yourself with.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
I'm sitting next to Darren.
Sorry.
Damn it.
Usually Mr. Winnie's here,
I know.
too. So
Not after he hears this one.
we're all in trouble.
He's like, wait a minute.
I'm
I
staying away
sit
from
with
those
you
guys.
guys? Oh, no.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
You
Wow.
might actually become an entrepreneur one day.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. So there's a couple of things about that I really like. First of all, I love the ability that you were able to be objective about your own work. And it's very hard. And to rewrite 3 times.
3 times. How many times did you rewrite your book?
I didn't. I wrote it one time and then published it.
Maybe you should.
I know.
No.
Now I'm starting to feel bad. Like, oh, man. No, but I did. We edited the hell out of it and went back. And I did. I retyped chapters. I added a chapter that...
I even caught something.
You did?
So.
But I like that you did that. But most importantly, the thing that I think struck me was, in the end, it was just raw and authentically you. And that's what, on this podcast, that's been one of the most important things to us, is getting to the truth, getting to reality. Because I think often, whatever it is that somebody has accomplished, when they sit back and talk about it, I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give them is our authentic self, the good, bad, and the ugly. So when they hear the story, they know, if I was faced with that, I could do it too. And so often you hear people talk about great accomplishments or overcoming great adversity, and they try to present themselves like they're some sort of superhero and like, oh, the key is to be strong and to never back down, and I never back down. And it's like, bullshit. You had days where you were, curled up in the corner crying, and we've all been there. But when we don't present it that way, it's hard for people to connect and then be moved by it.
Yeah. I might have been in the corner crying, but tomorrow is another day.
That's what I say every morning when I wake up.
Crying.
Well, I'm in the corner crying every day, and then I go, tomorrow's going to be another day.
That is an excellent point, because we've talked about that before. Especially as entrepreneurs, it's like one day you feel like you're on top of the world, and the next day, every single person you talk to is just, kicking you in the jimmy. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. Why am I doing this? But you're right. Tomorrow is another day. Mm-hmm. And as long as you have that outlook, and that outlook is an optimistic one, not that tomorrow is another day to get kicked in the teeth, but tomorrow is another day that I can overcome.
Then I might have Lion Creek beer in my refrigerator.
That's right.
That's the reason I start the day crying. It's like I've ran out.
Those are tears of joy when it's refilled.
My cabinet's empty. Oh, man. So, Marcia, you have, let me see here. Your book, people can purchase that on your website, right, which is strokeforward.com.
Or they can go to Amazon.
Okay.
Let Jeff Bezos get his cut,
Might as well.
So let me ask you a question, Marcia. When you were done with the book and it published, what was the feeling like when you got that first copy in your hands?
Disbelief.
Disbelief. Okay.
I know that I wrote it, and I know how long it took me to write it, but it sat in the shelf for almost a year before I really thought I wrote a book, which seems really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you how strange it feels to have a book with my picture on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually funny that you say that, because when I wrote mine, when I first did it, of course I was promoting it, I was talking about it all the time, and it was really humbling when I got the first copy and I was able to start giving it out. But it was like my whole world for a while. But interestingly enough, a few months ago, somebody was over at my house and they were in my office, and he goes, "Oh my God, dude, you wrote a book?" And all of a sudden it was like, I thought, I'm like, yeah, I'm an author.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. It's like I almost forgot about it, but like, yeah, I'm an author. That's cool. I'm going to do it again someday. But it's interesting that you had that. I almost had a similar experience. That's interesting.
It's like I touch it, I feel it, I see it, I know it's mine, but it felt so weird for a long time.
Yeah.
But now I'm an author.
Well, and you're also a speaker.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to start speaking?
So I started about a year and a half ago, year and a quarter, thinking I would speak. And the first speech was in January of this year.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've done a whole lot of speaking in the 2 months before COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and that's going to change, and I assure you of that. And I can only imagine how many people will be touched to hear your story in person. Yeah. Because I will share with you one of the things. We've had several people on the show that have overcome great adversity and found success in life, but to us, the most humbling and motivating stories of accomplishment are ones like this. Mm-hmm. Where when I hear your story, I'm like, man, my problems are nothing. Yeah. And people need to hear that.
So I kind of think the same thing about me. So I went to a stroke conference, and I hear people tell me about their strokes, and I'm going, man, I don't know if I would have had the courage to get through all of that, because their stories are so much worse than mine. Hmm. So, we're all different.
It's true.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's true. And I mean, that's my point, is there's always somebody that can share a story, share an experience, and humble you and motivate you to maybe wake up tomorrow and change your perspective. Because I guarantee you, all the people that are listening to this podcast, they're hearing your story, and they're going to wake up tomorrow and say, I'm standing a couple feet taller today. My problems aren't as big as I thought they were, and I'm going to dig deep, and I'm not going to worry about stuff that was holding me down yesterday. And that's powerful. And for you to get up and stand in front of a crowd of people and talk about what you went through, knowing that just 6 years ago you couldn't stand on your own. Mm-hmm. Let me do the math here. 3 years ago you couldn't even talk. Did I do the math right?
So far, you're doing good. Yeah, you're doing well.
And I'm drinking beer too.
Keep going.
Amazing.
You're doing fine.
But to sit there and
be able to balance your checkbook by the end of the day.
Let's not go crazy, Darren. But seriously, to sit there and listen to somebody stand up in front of a group of people and talk that couldn't talk 3 years ago, like that, wow, the impact that would have on me. So I know that this is going to be a big part of your story going forward, but what an accomplishment. I mean, even going back to January, your first time doing it, you went from, I can't walk, I can't talk, how do I advocate for myself? How do I advance my life? And now you're standing in front of people, probably, Marcia, whether you believe it or not, changing their lives forever. That's a big deal.
It's all about it's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
You don't know how many people you changed. But if there's one person out there that I can touch and he goes out and finds whatever therapy that he needs or she needs, I'm happy.
Well, and I guarantee you that that's happening. And it'll probably happen as you continue to advance this story and speak to more people, and more people read your book. You're going to have more of that impact than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. And, you know, I want to encourage everybody to buy this book. I mean, Stroke Forward. You can go to strokeforward.com. You can go to Amazon and, you know, give Jeff Bezos $1. Because I heard he was really struggling.
Yeah.
You know what?
Maybe.
I make the jokes, but I swear to God, you know, Amazon is like a drug problem for me.
Yeah.
It's like a needle I can't get out of my arm.
I just ordered more stuff today on there. I'm like, oh, I need toothbrush heads. Oh, look, I'll just go to Amazon.
Yeah.
I stopped at the local store and got them, but no, it's too easy.
I know.
And it's just the same way. It's just too easy to go to Amazon and order Marcia's book.
Yeah, so while you're buying gifts for people this year, this is a good one to throw in the basket.
This one, heck yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
and we'll post a link to it on our socials too. Now that I've figured out how to log back into Facebook.
You need to hurry up and finish this so I can read it, or maybe I'll just go buy it myself, and that way I can help Marcia.
So, Marcia, I want to ask you. You've been through an experience that is just something that most people probably won't experience, and it's an amazing journey that you've been through. Is there one or two lessons you learned that stand above all the rest, that if you're going to leave us with something, that's the one thing you want people to know?
Yes, and they've heard it before. Don't give up, ever.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's around the next corner.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know what? The thing about that lesson, that wisdom, Marcia, is I think a lot of times people hear that and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm talking to somebody that didn't give up and made it, but I want to give up all the time. And I think the fallacy that people need to understand about that is a lot of times there's people that stand in front of you and say, I made it, I overcame, I got to this point and I didn't give up. They think, well, they didn't have those days. But you do, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You definitely have those days.
Yeah.
But despite how you feel in the moment when you're feeling down, you have to power through it. And truly, the next day is better.
Unless you're podcasting with Darren.
Well, that I can't help you for.
You've made it through the show with us so far. It's not over yet, though.
Oh, my goodness.
Give it a chance. And you said, too, you had one other one.
Oh, if you're a caretaker, take time for yourself.
Mm. Mm-hmm. That's actually very true. There's a reason why when you get on the airplane, they say to put your own mask on before you help others.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because if you asphyxiate and pass out, well, you're no good to your kids helping them get theirs on.
Sometimes it might be you want to think twice before you do save one of them.
Or just, which one am I going to put a mask on first?
Right. Who was giving me more shit in the car on the way to the airport today?
Which one's got a better chance of taking care of me as an elderly adult? Oh, my gosh.
Less
Sorry.
strain on my checkbook later in life.
I know.
Okay, it's that one.
But it's so true that is, because I've so many times I've seen people just burn out trying to be the hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is important. I mean, it's one of those things you hear it all the time. You got to have some me time. You got to take care of yourself.
Well, you're talking about your husband, right? He was probably there 24/7 and scared to leave you by yourself.
He's still scared for me.
Yeah. Do you tell him now that he's just a little overbearing, he needs to leave you alone for a few minutes?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, if he gets a chance to listen to this, I'm telling you right now, back off just a little bit, okay? She's gonna be fine. She's strong. She's writing things or whatever. What do you call a book? I've never seen one of those before. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right, and I think that those are wise words and wise lessons, and I'm excited for you, and I can't wait until you're speaking at really large crowds, and because I know you will.
Yep.
Your story is inspirational to where more and more people are going to hear about you. Your story is going to spread organically.
Yep.
I assure you of that. And
Yep.
I'm excited for the future for you. And you're an inspiration to us. I mean, just the short time that we've talked to you today has been a blessing to me. I can assure you tomorrow I'm going to wake up and feel a little bit better about my circumstances than I do right now.
I'll spend less time crying in the corner tomorrow morning than I did today.
Because you know the next day is going to be better.
That's it.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Well, while we were sitting here talking to you, Marcia, I actually switched gears. I started drinking another Line Creek beer called Merry and Bright. We've had this on the show before. It's a Christmas ale.
Yum.
Christmas is rapidly approaching, and
Yep.
this is a really good. It's got a little bit of like spice. I can taste like nutmeg and cinnamon,
nutmeg in
and
there. Mm-hmm.
it's really, really good. So, and this one's a little bit heavier gravity, 7.4. So this is one that you want to buy before they don't have anymore. So, if you're watching on video, that's what it looks like. And it's so delicious.
It's on tap.
Yes, and we want to thank Line Creek. Please make sure that you thank them as well by buying their beer.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, what's the point?
How do I know when they're
That's how
open,
sponsorship works. Well, you can go to their website, or you can use the Brewery Hours app. We just talked to Jason
Right.
a couple of weeks ago, so you can download the app and check from there. And they even have their events and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah, they got live music and food trucks this weekend.
Yeah. And Marcia, again, it's been a pleasure. The book is Stroke Forward. Go to Amazon.com today. Put it in your cart. It'll take you 2 seconds.
Or go to strokeforward.com.
Or go to strokeforward.com. Buy the book there. Book Marcia to come speak at your next event. She's worth it.
I think so.
And whatever her rates
Absolutely.
are, pay her extra because you're a beer and business listener and you're that good. So
And it'll get her husband off her back for a little bit. She
Yeah,
can
no
send
kidding.
him away.
She needs-
to leave her alone, to give her some alone time.
she needs a little bit more paycheck, a little bit more money so the husband will get off her back, okay? But Marcia, we really appreciate you coming on and being so raw and honest. This has been an honor. I love hearing your story, and it exceeded my expectations. And I'm glad that you reached that doorknob.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, Jake and Darren.
Thank you.